Hey, this is Jeff Bond, and welcome to the Chat with Leaders podcast. We're a platform for leaders to share the inspiring things they're doing to lead themselves, their teams, and the communities they serve wisely. Today, I chat with Nathan Camp, the CEO of Start Church in Metro Atlanta, which is a company dedicated to meeting the needs of pastors, leaders, and church boards with a bevy of valuable software products and resources, giving them everything they need to establish new churches and ministries and have a positive impact in their communities. We chat about how courage is not an option as leaders face unprecedented challenges due to the pandemic, how he's been inspired to invest in his team's future despite all odds, his important distinction between earning versus receiving a living, the new normals he sees for ministry and nonprofit leaders, and the importance of centering yourself within a community of inspiring leaders to support your own growth. It was a great chat, and I really hope you enjoy it with Nathan Camp. Welcome to Chat with Leaders, Nathan.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you. What a happy coincidence that you and I met on a campground at Stone Mountain, and this was our maiden voyage for our family. And I think
Yeah,
I had some questions about how to stabilize my RV or do these things, and you coming from a greater level of experience shared some nice words of wisdom. And then I found out that you're the CEO of Start Church here in the Metro Atlanta area, and have really enjoyed following you and look forward to unpacking some big ideas with you today.
yeah, Jeff. I love those random meetings that just end up being something great. So I'm honored to be on the podcast. Looking forward to it.
Well, it just goes to show that we can balance our work and life and be out there in the RV world and
That's
still
right.
get things done and make some good connections.
Absolutely.
So let's jump right in, Nathan. We're going to talk today about how courage is non-negotiable. And we've been faced with this unprecedented circumstance from the pandemic, and a lot of leaders are operating in a place of fear, whether they like to admit it or not. There's this low
Yeah,
level kind of tension that exists with
sure.
all of us. So I think it's a great topic, and particularly as you've been a servant in the nonprofit community and the ministry community, and
Sure.
your clients for your software company are churches and ministry leaders who are trying to help give people that courage. So
Yeah.
I know you have a lot of interesting perspective there. What is the greatest impact that you've seen the pandemic having, not only on your organization, but the churches and ministry leaders that you serve?
Yeah, that's a great question. Initially, like everybody, we remember March 11th, it's kind of a big day when the NBA cut it and you said, oh, this is for real. Initially everybody had shock. I think everybody had a little chaos, a little mystery. But you know what's awesome, Jeff? I've seen that really turn to resolve. What we do here at Start Church, we help churches and ministries get launched. And did you know we started over 200 more churches in
Mm,
2020 than we did in 2019? And I think that's what's happening. I think that's what's happening. A lot of people is there is a sense that the pandemic and the changes it's forced upon us has created greater resolve. I think that there's a sense where calling is calling, irregardless of culture. So when you're called to do something, and that could either be ministerially, that could be in your work, that could be even in a sense in your family. I'm hearing more and more people saying, yeah, it was initially very shocking for us to have quarantine and this sort of thing. But then we just bought up that time. And I know my kids more. I spent more time with my spouse. I spent more time with my family. I spent more time in the RV, utilizing this time to resolve and say, this is really who I'm supposed to be. This is who I'm supposed to invest into. And so I think the initial part was shock, but I really love how it's turned into quite a lot of resolve.
Interesting perspective. And I know that I felt that in so many ways, particularly looking back and valuing the time that I've had with my family,
Yeah.
looking at the pictures and just all the great experiences and so forth. And interesting that you talked about the growth and the fact that you've served 200 more churches this year than the year before. And all I've seen is kind of the decline of the
Yeah.
church and less attendance and kind of people that are spiritual but not religious, or religious but not spiritual, or nuns, just people that don't go to church at all or align with any sort of faith. And
Sure.
so I always think like there's a bit of a sense of with adversity comes equal or greater opportunity. And maybe this is an awakening of some sorts, but I guess, what do you attribute that to, that
Yeah.
growth?
Yeah. Again, I think in moments like this, you take inventory of your life. I think what happened, like, for example, let's talk about being husbands and fathers, right? All of a sudden, we're working from home a lot. All of a sudden, we're having more meals than we've had before, right? We're having more dinners as a family. And I think there's something in those moments where we find ourselves saying, I've missed something.
Hmm.
I've gotten off course a little, and this moment is reminding me on what's most valuable. I have a saying that I always say, I want to make sure I'm winning at the right thing.
Hmm.
And I think what's happened during this time is we're remembering what the right thing is. And again, what that is for everybody else, it's all different. That could be in
Sure.
your business, in your family, in your faith, whatever. But there is a sense that we're having a moment to take inventory and say, man, I've been spinning my wheels for so long.
Hmm.
For example, I'm here in Metro Atlanta. We work and we go to baseball games, like our kids are in baseball, softball, lacrosse, all that kind of thing. When that got cut, all of a sudden there's this huge chunk of our time that we had to decide where we were going to reinvest it.
Hmm.
And in the moment, to be able to breathe and have this sort of moment of lucidity to say, well, then what do I want to invest that back into? And again,
Hmm.
I think it just lands with a sense of resolve for a lot of people saying, you know what, I've got an opportunity to buy this up with my kids. I've got an opportunity to get to know my wife or my husband in a deeper way. I've got a chance to go after my faith like I've never done before. And I think that's the positive side of the challenges that we're in right now.
Hmm.
It's really drawing a moment of clarity for a lot of people. And I think that's something that's good, that's coming out of a really terrible situation.
That's a great perspective. And it certainly doesn't take away from the tragedy of it all and the hurt and the
Oh,
anguish that a lot of people have felt and the sorrow from the pandemic. But
yeah,
the perspective for those of us who have been so blessed to survive it and to reconnect with our families and to get that valuable resource of time, which is that resource that we never get back.
yeah,
And
that's
frankly, so many men, particularly, thinking about, our aspirational goals of, our careers and our leadership and our growth, we get so hyper focused on that. And then we don't realize that our only unique role as a leader is that to our children.
absolutely.
Nobody else can do that. And if you're not present in their lives, then, hey, you're really missing out on
Yeah.
this stewardship opportunity of this greatest gift that we've been given. So really love hearing that perspective. Given that many leaders are operating from that place of fear right now, and it's perfectly natural, even if we are acting courageous, we're feeling that low level tension.
Yeah.
What encouragement have you received personally in your leadership to continue to invest in your business's future?
Yeah, I think so. We're all feeling that same low level tension all the time, right? And what I have to understand as a leader, first off, is that courage is non-negotiable. I'm a partner in our company, and our founder called me and when this first started, and he said, Nathan, I want to remind you, courage, have courage. This is a time to be bold and have courage.
Hmm.
And as a leader, I don't have the luxury of just retreating. I don't have the luxury of just, being panicky. As a leader, I need to find out what's true for me and my family and my business. And then I need to have courage moving forward and resolve. And so I remind myself, courage is non-negotiable in the area of leadership. I think the other one is that I want to be saving. So as a business leader, as a businessman, obviously cash right now is very important, right?
Hmm.
And making sure I have strong cash on hand, but not to the detriment of my future.
Hmm.
It's I need to make sure that I'm prioritizing. Courage doesn't just say I make a bold move. Courage says we're going to make it through this. And what will I want to be true about our business a couple of years from now? And I
Hmm.
think some leaders have so given into fear that they have continued to pocket all of their seed instead of investing that seed.
Hmm.
And so I have this feeling that in the next 2 to 3 years, you're going to see the fruit in the businesses that had courage and continued to invest, right? So yes, have a strong cash position, but don't do it at the detriment of investing into your future, right?
Hmm.
So I think that that's really important. And then for me, Jeff, and we had talked about this the other day, it reminds me in this moment to discern whether I earn a living or receive a living. So, my personal faith is that I'm a Christian. I believe that Jesus is the Lord of my life and that he is the provider. And so that's a big deal in many, many ways. But even in the area of provision, I believe that I am receiving a living
Hmm.
from my provider. I'm not earning a living. Yes, I work hard, and yes, I work smart, and I'm making sure to be a good steward. But ultimately, I believe the Lord is my provider,
Hmm.
and in that, again, it speaks to my ability to have peace, even in the midst of chaos. In the very beginning, I'll give a little Bible verse here. In the very beginning, when this happened, I immediately thought of the story in the Old Testament where it said that there was bread in Goshen in a time of famine. And I said, why not us? Why not our business? Why can't we be the place where there's bread, even when there's famine all around us? And that makes sense. If I'm not earning a living, I'm receiving a living. And so those three things have really galvanized my leadership over this last year. Courage is non-negotiable. I'm going to save, but continue to invest in my future. And I'm going to make sure to keep the posture of receiving, not earning a living. And that's given my heart steadiness, I think, during this time.
That's great perspective. And I've heard so often that leaning on our faith during this time has been the reason why we've gotten through it. And gosh,
Absolutely.
I would be a hot mess right now if I didn't have faith to lean on, or if I
I
didn't
know.
have that those truths from the Bible to help me
Yeah,
to see clearly that we can continue to invest in our future. So thanks
absolutely.
for providing that encouragement. I'm interested, particularly with church. We've had pastors on this show and leaders in corporate America and nonprofit communities. But what new normals do you see for churches and ministry leaders and even
Yeah.
nonprofit leaders once we've moved past the pandemic and hopefully
Really.
that's by 2022?
No, that's right. Well, I'll put on. So I'm a former church planter. You probably knew that.
Mhm.
We've planted 2 churches, and so I love church planters. They're always trying to figure out how to do it, in fresh new ways. So there's a couple things that I think that are true about the new normal. One is that we're going to be creative in what we call missions. The internet is a mission field. Online is a mission field, and I think a lot of churches, Jeff, um, it's been a necessary evil. Now it's the way they can reach more people. So a church I started a couple years ago, which I've turned over to another pastor, and they're doing excellent. They all of a sudden their reach, like week 2, their reach exponentially grew of the amount of people. They have several hundred, people in the church. All of a sudden they were having 800 people viewing their service. That is a mission field. People in this time of tension are looking for answers. You know where they look a lot of time immediately? Those that, haven't yet found faith in Christ, they look on the internet. So I think there's this creative portion of what missions looks like that is going to stick around. The second thing is I think small is the new big. And the last generation, everything was big, 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 right? And I get all this. Now I think that we're seeing the power in the small, normalizing that the gospel moves most through living rooms more than in major sanctuaries. Numerically, I think is huge. I think that shift of valuing what's happening across the fence in the backyard with a neighbor and normalizing that and validating that, quite honestly, is huge. I also think sending capacity is going to be the new metric. I was talking about it to a church recently, and they weren't gathering physically. And I said, then what I would do if I were you, they're kind of asking in some of my consultation, I said, I would take your top 10 or 20 leaders and I would pour into them so that they can make their houses places of influence, and again, it's not, I'm in the South. It's not y'all come anymore. It's y'all go. Y'all go, and whatever we can do as a church to empower you and inspire you and quite honestly, resource you. That's a real empowering part of the new normal. And then I think, obviously, Jeff, staying nimble. This isn't the last Corona, in my opinion. This isn't the last pandemic or thing the days of we do the same thing every week at one location. I just don't think those are here to stay. I think those are gone. I think we'll have buildings, but I think they're one asset in an organization. Nonprofits, I think they're going to may have a fixed location, but it's just one of the things they do. And I think if you stay nimble, I think if your business stays nimble, you're going to have the ability to navigate the water. So, at Star Church, we've embraced a very hybrid work environment, and we can succeed. We can succeed if we have to work from home. We can succeed. And we have a big downtown office in Duluth, Georgia. Doesn't matter. If you hire the right people, you give them a noble task and serve a noble customer and stay nimble, I think you can work through it no matter what it is.
There's so many good things that I heard there. The one thing that I thought was interesting was the go out. And I think a lot of the times, in ministry or even in our businesses, the best opportunities are created outside of our own 4 walls. And sometimes we idolize our buildings and our space and where we do our work. But, there's so much good that can come out relationally by going out and building those relationships with your neighbors or with new business partners or clients and going and seeing people. And I think that's where everyone is really anxious to snap back to, is that opportunity when we can kind of all feel that energy of being together again and hopefully with the new perspective carried forward that will
Yeah.
really help all these businesses move forward. That's
Absolutely.
great. Is there kind of, I guess, a larger picture kind of call to action that you would throw out there for just leaders in general, as you've had time to reflect on the pandemic and going into 2021 and all the tensions that we've had?
Yeah.
What would be kind of the encouragement that you would
Yeah.
provide?
I think first off, leaders need to be with other leaders. Don't learn your own lessons, if you will. I think being with chat with leaders. I mean, this is a great opportunity. Follow this webpage and listen to these podcasts. I learned so much from other leaders. If I'm trying to learn all my own lessons, that's a slow process. So I think now more than ever, collaboration is really important. Get a part of a cohort. If you're a leader, if you're CEO, your CFO, you should be meeting with other CFOs. How are you leading through a season of fiscal fluidity? If you're a CEO, how are you leading forward in those sort of things? So I think togetherness, however that looks like, is really important. And as odd as that says in a time of social distancing, however you can be together with voices, real great podcasts, always be listening to fresh voices. It keeps me sharp, keeps me full, gives me perspective. So that's a big call to action, I would say. And then obviously, listen, this is a time when faith gets real. So I want to encourage people, this is a great time to ask what you really believe, what your life really counts for, and what's going to stand for. What is a win? I encourage you to win at the right thing.
Great advice. And not just because you alluded to how great Chat with Leaders is and a great resource it is for other leaders. I appreciate the kind words, but leadership is a lifelong learning journey. And that's why we have this show is to share how other leaders are forging ahead faithfully and providing hope and inspiration to other leaders within this community. So thank you for validating and affirming kind of those reasons why we started this all in the first place, this wonderful journey. It's very life-giving to me too. So Nathan, if people wanted to learn more about you, get connected, learn more about Start Church, where would you direct them?
Yeah, so you can check out our website at startchurch.com. Obviously, I'm on LinkedIn, Nathan Camp. You can always look me up there. And my email is nathan@startchurch.com. It goes right to me. And anytime we can serve or help other leaders, we'd be honored to do that.
Well, it's such an honor to have you on today. And I'm so happy that God had it in his plan for us to meet at Stone Mountain Campground on our travel trailer adventures, and hope to run into you out there in the travel field as well. But blessings to you and your business, and for a great 2021.
Thanks, Jeff. You too.